meaning the jury found him not guilty 14 times.
They knew he was innocent by that time.
Absolutely. I mean,
They knew.
this case was a travesty as far as I'm concerned. An absolute injustice to put Michael Jackson through this horrible, horrible process with evidence like that, in my opinion, was a travesty.
Am I going too far when I say this was an inquisition of a talented young black man that was living in a white community?
I don't think so. I mean, you look, was racism the origin of this? I don't know. Could it easily have been? It could have been. I don't know. I do know that the district attorney of Santa Barbara County apparently focused on Mr. Jackson in the early 90s, specifically 1993. He conducted an investigation. He launched a grand jury probe in Santa Barbara and instigated a grand jury probe in Los Angeles. So in the early 90s, you had two grand juries investigating Michael Jackson, and neither one charged him with anything. Then in the mid-90s, based on information I received, apparently the district attorney traveled to Australia and Canada looking for alleged victims of Michael Jackson, and from what I'm told, couldn't find any. There was a website at the sheriff's department in this county looking for information about Michael Jackson. And finally, a third grand jury was convened in, I believe it was 2003, 2004, actually 2004, that did indict him on 10 felony counts. And that's what started the process that resulted in the trial of 2005.
Well, I thought at least he was maybe guilty of giving some wine, but I had the pleasure, after the trial had been over for, I don't know, a year or two, of seeing at a bar association meeting in Santa Barbara when Christina Stanley, the late Christina Stanley, was making her announcement she was running to replace Tom Sneddon. And Gordon Auchincloss turned to me after I said something to somebody. He said, well, don't you really think Michael is guilty? And I said to him, and it gave me a little pleasure. I said, Mr. Auchincloss, you prosecutors proved to me he was innocent of everything. With your lying witnesses to get caught, your bogus fingerprint evidence. And I started to go into this fingerprint evidence, and to me, nothing sticks in my mind so greatly is that day you put the little pointer pen light laser up on the calendar of the Barely Legal magazine after you had got Gavin at least 7, 8 times to say, yes, Michael gave me that magazine in the bed, and yes, I'd last minute Neverland and such a month. I forget, it was January, February, or March. And the date on it was October. And you made Gavin read the date. And then you asked him again, now when were you last at Neverland? And you say he gave you this words. Didn't that make a striking impression? I looked at the jury and they were like, the front row was going like rolling their eyes like, oh my God, can we do any? Why is this going on? I mean, the jurors were rolling their eyes. How soon before that did you know? I mean, you must have been laying that trap for him. How soon before the trial started did you know that Tom Sneddon had physically given the physical magazine with no gloves on, and given it to Gavin Avizo in the grand jury indictment proceeding? How soon before that did you know?
Well, my law firm partner and co-counsel, Susan Yu, she was the one that I worked through all the evidence with. We were the lead counsel in the case. Randy and Michael Jackson asked me to come to Florida, said they wanted Susan Yu and me to defend Michael as lead counsel. And she was the one that I primarily went through all the evidence with. Susan Yu is the most brilliant legal strategist I've ever met in my career. She's a tireless worker, she's brilliant, she's intuitive, and she doesn't leave a stone unturned. So we were going through all of this a number of months before the trial and fastened upon this issue. And it was one of many things, I think, that we revealed in that trial that showed that these witnesses were not telling the truth and were not to be believed. You know, you don't... A trial isn't over till it's over, as Yogi Berra, sort of said. You don't overreact to a good day or a bad day. You keep everything in perspective. It's a holistic thing, so you can't really score it the way the media does and say, it's the bottom of the third inning and one team is doing better than another team. It doesn't work that way. You have to just look at everything in terms of a whole, and it's not done till it's done. So I never overreact to a good moment or a bad moment. I just keep things in perspective, do it one day at a time, and just keep focused on your objective. And Ms. Yu and I just, that was one of the pieces of evidence, many pieces of evidence that we looked at very carefully and found a lot of problems with.
Well, Susan Yu is a brilliant attorney, as you say, and very camera shy.
Yeah, she doesn't care for the media.
She will not talk to me or anybody. She just seems to avoid cameras like it's the plague.
Well, she's just a fabulous lawyer. You know, for example, last year, she and I tried a very high-profile federal criminal case in Los Angeles. It was the highest-grossing real estate agent in the country, charged with many counts of collectively mortgage fraud. It was money laundering, conspiracy, wire fraud, loan fraud, bank fraud. He'd been indicted on 21 counts by a federal grand jury. Susan Yu dissected the case beautifully. She did the opening statement. I did the closing. We split witnesses. He was not convicted on a single felony count. Earlier in the year, she was lead counsel in an embezzlement trial. The district attorney's office in Los Angeles was alleging initially about over $1 million in embezzled funds. She hung the jury in that case, and then it settled for no jail time. She then did the opening and closing in a rape trial, hung the jury again, then a deal was made with no jail time, and then she was co-counsel with another lawyer, not me, in a child molestation case, hung the jury 11-1 for not guilty, and the case was dismissed. So her trial record is just sensational. I mean, after the Jackson trial, she represented the queen of an African country, Gabon, who was being defrauded out of her home. There was a couple of days from closing escrow. This is a multi-million-dollar home that was going to be basically stolen out from under her. Susan went into court, stopped the proceeding, conducted a trial. The judge found fraud in the inducement, just nullified the entire transaction. She and I both represented a plastic surgeon with serious counts against him, including counts involving sexual impropriety. That was before the Medical Board of California. Susan did the opening and the closing argument. We won that case. I mean, she's a fabulous lawyer.
Wow.
I wouldn't want anyone else with me in any of these cases, especially the Michael Jackson case. When I was in Florida meeting Randy and Michael, Randy I'd known for many years, but Michael I hadn't met until Randy asked me to come down. And I told them that I will not do this case unless Susan Yu is with me, and Randy said we know all about her. In fact, he had an interesting comment. He said there's too much testosterone in the courtroom anyway, because everybody was a male, you know, in the court. So she was the lone female lawyer in the courtroom, and she and I every day just went through this evidence. We had a war room in the condo complex where we lived. Susan had her duplex, I had mine, our staff had theirs. We had a war room with about 3,000 to 4,000 binders. For every single witness in the case, we had every document organized in chronological order. Whether it was a newspaper article, a police report, an interview, you name it, handwritten notes, whatever it was, we had them in chronological order for every witness. Some witnesses you'd have 3 binders, some you'd have 25 binders or 30 binders. And we would go through that, she and I, as we do in every case, you know, just every single day. And that's how I was prepared to attack these witnesses.
Oh. So it hasn't hurt your career taking the Michael Jackson case and winning?
It hasn't, but I have to tell you, before it, I was, you know, warned by some very close friends of mine who I trust dearly not to take it. They said, look, you can't win it. And if you lose it, everywhere you go in the world, people are going to say he's the one that sent Michael Jackson to prison.
Right.
So they didn't want me to take it. They thought the rest of my life would be defined by that case, and he would die in prison. So I thought about it. I said, this is who I am. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I'm proud of what I do. And I decided to take the case. I hadn't looked at the evidence yet at that point. Once I started picking through this evidence, and once I started talking to him and trying to get a feel for what kind of a person he was, it started to look more and more like a completely ridiculous, absolutely unjust prosecution, and that's what I believe it was. It was unjust, it was cruel, and it was ridiculous.